Hi, this is Umer and you are watching Canada View at Voice of Canada. First of all, we will discuss the top stories. Following a tough season away from home in Tampa, Florida, the Toronto Reports have returned home for the 2021 and 22 NBA season.
We're back in Toronto for the 2021-22 season, and with a new season comes new hope after a difficult season away in Tampa.
Well, we're a young team, and we were going to grow. I think we're going to have some patience. We have some experienced young veterans on our team, and they know what winning is. So, and we're about winning. We want to win, and we know it's going to be difficult at times. There's no doubt about that. But these guys are going to play hard. They're going to compete every night. We have no doubt about that, and I have no doubt that they're going to grow, into a really good winning team in the NBA.
With injuries and COVID-19 ravaging their roster, the Raps found a silver lining at the NBA draft in number 4 overall pick Scotty Barnes. Barnes can pretty much play any position on the Raptors and brings his length and ultra-competitive defense to Nick Nurse's squad. Young forward OG Anunoby could be in the running for a Most Improved Player award this year, following another season of growth where he put up career bests in a number of offensive categories. The 23rd overall pick from 2017 quickly established himself as one of the better athletic defenders in the league, and his offensive prowess has grown leaps and bounds as he begins his 5th season in the league. It was a tough pill to swallow for Raptors fans when franchise point guard Kyle Lowry was dealt to the Miami Heat in a sign-and-trade deal. In return for Lowry, Toronto was able to pry away athletic big man Precious Achiuwa. Achiuwa will be counted on to give the Raptors a presence down low, something the team has struggled with following the departures of big men Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol from the previous year. Achiuwa, along with Canadian big men Khem Birch and Chris Boucher, will form Toronto's front court presence. Also coming to Toronto from Miami was veteran point guard Goran Dragic. With Lowry gone, the keys to the Raptors are now firmly in the hands of Fred VanVleet.
It's always a challenge every season, and every season that you start, there's going to be players that are not there from the year before. This season, it just so happens to be, Kyle Lowry. So we'll try to pick up the slack that he left behind, the greatest Raptor to do it. But I read a quote the other day that said, there's things that have never been done every day. So, I'm up for the challenge. I think the team is ready for the challenge, and we have a young, hungry group that are looking to prove themselves.
And once he returns from off-season shoulder surgery, Pascal Siakam will likely return to his role as a go-to guy on the offensive end. Acquired last season from the Portland Trail Blazers, Gary Trent Jr. will be counted on to provide scoring, along with fellow swingman Svi Mihalik, who was brought in as a free agent during the off-season. Toronto's second-round pick from this past NBA draft, the Toronto-born Delano Banton, became the first ever Canadian drafted by the franchise.
All the hard work you put in, and just everyone in the draft wanting to hear their name called and just being blessed with that opportunity, and it being to the Raptors. I feel like just both of my dreams coming true at once. It's kind of surreal to me still, but I'm just grateful for the opportunity.
The Raptor brain trust of Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster have retooled with youth to pair alongside the emerging veteran presence of Siakam and VanVleet.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau indicating the federal government has sent all records on residential schools to the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation are not accurate, according to a statement from the centre.
The Tecumseh-Shwetmik community has been publicly renewing calls for unfettered access to student attendance records in the possession of the federal government since they made the announcement in late May about hundreds of unmarked burial sites near the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. They say those documents are critical in helping to identify the children who didn't survive the institutions of assimilation. During his visit to the community, the Prime Minister was asked how soon those records would be handed over. Here's part of his response.
All the records in possession of the federal government have already been turned over to the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation in Winnipeg.
The PM's statements were not accurate, adding, "We are still waiting for Canada to provide the final versions of school narratives and supporting documents used in the independent assessment process. We are also still unable to access Indian hospital records, federal health records, and day school records." Residential school survivors and their families have been waiting a long time. It was in 2015 when negotiations for these attendance records were sparked from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The PM visited the BC community to compensate for vacationing in Tofino on the country's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, rather than accepting invitations from the band to attend their event.
Canadian kids will be able to get their first doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine soon after these shots are approved by Health Canada, says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement outside of a children's hospital in Ottawa early Thursday, adding the National Health Regulator is already reviewing the drug company's submission, which was received this week, but couldn't give an exact date for the approval or the vaccination rollout.
I know that parents are eager to see the vaccines available for 5 to 11-year-olds, but I also know that parents want to know that those vaccines will be safe, which is why Health Canada will be taking the necessary time and rigorous processes to ensure that that is safe before approving it.
Children aged 5 to 11 will get 2 shots of the lower dosage vaccine, 1/3 the amount of adults, 3 weeks apart. The doses will be administered using a smaller syringe. While experts have found young children are at lower risk for severe COVID, Toronto pediatrician Dr. Anna Banerjee says reaching this population could help boost herd immunity.
Having the younger kids vaccinated increases the chances of them going forward and less schools closing down, less outbreaks, less people getting infected.
Canada's Public Health Agency has noted rare incidents of myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart muscle post-vaccine, something the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, or NACI, will weigh in on once it looks at the benefits and risks of the shot for young kids.
During a technical briefing regarding COVID-19 in Saskatchewan on Wednesday, Chief Medical Health Officer Dr. Saqib Shahab got emotional.
I have no shame in pleading to the public that, we've gone so far, and we just have to pull along for the next few weeks and months.
An emotional plea from Saskatchewan's top doctor as the province continues to shoulder near record high ICU admissions, so many that patients are now being transferred to be treated in Ontario.
It is distressing to see what is happening in our ICUs and hospitals, and I'm sorry, it's a very challenging time. Thank you.
We are very concerned about using up all of our available capacity because we know we need to be able to respond to things that are actually happening out there.
While surge efforts have increased total ICU beds in Saskatchewan to 136, there are already 82 COVID-19 positive and 32 non-COVID patients occupying them. That's 114 in total. 3 additional patients were already transferred to Ontario hospitals earlier this week. And now, the province confirming 3 more will be transferred by end of day Wednesday.
We have established a threshold for 116 ICU patients that we're using to consider whether we would initiate and continue transfers.
As for the likelihood that more transfers will be needed, modeling presented by Shahab Wednesday showed that if current spread trends continue, ICU admissions could swell to beyond 250 patients, though he says booster shots combined with masking and new vaccinations and limited contact could bring numbers down before Christmas.
We can turn this around, and we've done this again and again. Public health orders help, but ultimately it's been our collective and individual actions that has turned things around.
Canadian seniors should get a 3rd dose of the COVID-19 vaccine because their immunity is now waning, say health experts.
Benita Silver is approaching her golden years. She's also asthmatic, so she knows every breath of fresh air shouldn't be taken for granted.
It's really, really terrifying not to be able to inhale.
A very real concern if she gets COVID, which is why she wants a 3rd vaccine to protect herself.
There's been some really good studies showing that a booster shot in these populations in particular will certainly, give them better protection.
Already, the U.S. has recommended third doses for those over 65 and may soon lower that eligibility to 40 plus. Meantime, in the UK, boosters are now being offered for those 50 and older. But here, Canadians over 64 are still waiting.
The National Advisory Committee on Immunization is going to be making further recommendations quite soon.
But public health officials aren't saying when. Only the Northwest Territories have opened up the option to all residents 60 and older.
The problem now is we have people who, have been vaccinated, but may not really know that they may not be protected as well as they thought they were.
Researcher Rod Russell says we only need to look to places like Israel to see there's a risk in waiting to give additional doses to older, more vulnerable populations.
6 to 7 months post second shot, there was, increased breakthrough infection.
And in the mortality rate in certain age groups, too. As of October 2nd, 520 fully vaccinated Canadians have died. Russell says seniors, especially those with underlying conditions who were vaccinated more than 6 months ago, should now act as if they haven't got the shot at all. Silver got her final jab in August.
You get older, your defenses run down, so any kind of assistance is appreciated.
A boost she says she's ready to take anytime.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Saturday he has ordered the foreign ministry to expel ambassadors from 10 Western countries, including Canada, after they called for the release of philanthropist Osman Kavala.
Yatıyorlar, kalkıyorlar. Kavala, 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 kavala. Yahu Kavala dediğin Soros'un Türkiye şubesi. 10 tane büyükelçi onun için Dışişleri Bakanlığı'na geliyor. Bu ne terbiyesizliktir ya? Burası Türkiye, Türkiye. Burada kalkıp da Dışişleri Bakanlığı'na gelip talimat verme gibi bir yola giremezsiniz. Gerekli talimatı ben de Dışişleri Bakanımıza verdim. Ne yapması gerektiğini söyledim. Bu 10 tane Dışişleri Bakanı'nın Dışişleri Büyükelçi, bunların bir an önce istenmeyen adam ilan edilmelerini hemen halledeceksiniz dedim.
Although Canada is not out of the pandemic yet, parts of British Columbia and Ontario are lifting their COVID-19 capacity limits as of midnight Monday.
In Saskatoon Saturday, thousands attended the concert of country music star Eric Church. And though everyone had to show proof of vaccination in the midst of a punishing fourth wave, the crowded venue images provoked concern.
I wouldn't be surprised if there is multiple outbreaks, happening that is associated with that concert last night.
Saskatchewan has had no gathering or capacity limits in place since the summer, something many in the medical community have been pushing to change as the province now sends critically ill patients to Ontario. It's a stark contrast to the situation elsewhere in Ontario and BC, where many public health measures have remained in place well into fall. This week, venues in Metro Vancouver and on Vancouver Island will finally return to full capacity.
In terms of the larger venues, we were the holdouts with respect to the rest of Canada, so it would have required a very significant and convincing explanation to not do it. So in that context, I think it is the right step at this time.
Ontario is also lifting business capacity restrictions this week.
That's not unreasonable, with a huge caveat that if
we start to see things headed in the wrong direction, you've got to scale things back a little bit.
Ontario is now looking towards the end of all restrictions, easing vaccine passport requirements beginning in January, a change Alberta's Open for Summer Premier is not rushing towards.
We think the program's working well. It will be in place at least until the first quarter of next year. We'll assess it then based on COVID trends here and around the world.
When it comes to this pandemic, no two jurisdictions have handled things the same way. But after a disastrous autumn across much of the West, Canada's winter months will undoubtedly demand some caution.
Ontario has announced plans to lift all COVID-19 public health restrictions by the end of March 22. It has only been 2 weeks since arenas, theatres and cinemas opened up, and health experts worry the province is moving too soon.
Andrei Yakovenko is eager to be fully open after more than a year of COVID restrictions and lost revenue.
It's been a challenge. We're probably still missing well over 50% of our client base.
At midnight on October 25th, Ontario businesses requiring proof of vaccination will again be allowed to operate at full capacity, with the goal of removing all precautionary measures, masking, vaccine passports, social distancing, by the end of March.
By March, we hope we've maximized our immunization strategy in Ontario, that we have more Ontarians immunized to the point that this virus doesn't have a host in which it can reproduce.
This includes first and second doses for kids from 5 to 11 and booster shots for at least some. But there is concern the province may be jumping the gun. It's only been 2 weeks since arenas, cinemas, concert venues, and theaters opened back up to full capacity, and health experts say this plateau may not be permanent.
We need to wait still a few days until we start to understand how this last step of the reopening process actually impacts us.
Patience that could help Ontario avoid the same mistakes as other provinces, where critical care units are still struggling with the consequences of reopening too soon. Or take Finland and Denmark, two northern countries facing climbing cases after lifting most public measures.
If we do not see the numbers in a stable place, we just aren't going to do it. It's as simple as that.
Small businesses say another lockdown could be crushing.
I think it might be too late for some, but those that are able to make a go of it, this will really help.
Ontario says that any businesses that want to fully reopen will just have to enforce the vaccine passport program, something it plans to get rid of by January 17th. And if ICUs remain in good standing and case counts continue to drop off, March 28th is the day Ontarians can circle with cautious optimism for a return to normal. Jamie Morocker, Global News, Toronto.
This was Canada View. For further updates regarding Canada, you can visit our website voiceofcanada.tv.